Welcome back to Shop Talk for Season 5. I'm Brandi.
And this is James. We talk about all things related to mental health and cross-cultural workers.
So glad you're here.
Welcome back to Shop Talk. We're excited today to dig into a conversation that we've danced around, but we're really going to talk about what does it mean to prepare for a home assignment back to your country of origin. So, Brandi, who do we have up today?
So excited today. We have Kristen Cagwin here. Welcome, Kristen. So glad you're here.
Good to be here.
Hey, Kristen is a fellow Kanderner, so I've known her for several years, known her and her husband Joel, so I'm very happy to have you. Kristen grew up in Illinois and attended Wheaton College, where she met her husband Joel. They moved to Kandern, Germany in 2013 and have lived there since. They worked at Black Forest Academy. They've had 2 furloughs, one in the US in Wheaton, Illinois, and they spent a year in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where Kristen interned at Cornerstone Counseling Foundation. Their son graduated from BFA in 2025 and attends Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, and their 3 younger daughters are still at home with them and currently attend BFA. Kristen has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Concordia University, Irvine, and a master's degree in intercultural studies from Wheaton College. Kristen has her LMHCA. Can you tell us what that is?
Licensed mental health counselor associate. I'll wrap up my full licensure this fall. So
that's very, very exciting for you. Kristen also is a certified spiritual director through Sustainable Faith and a trained yoga instructor through the Yoga Abbey. Currently, Kristen works part-time in the counseling department at BFA and part-time as a member care counselor with her sending organization. In her free time, she enjoys hiking in and around Kandern. I miss that so much. Oh my gosh, so happy for you. Listening to podcasts and relaxing with family and friends. In her counseling role, she enjoys getting to know her clients and accompanying them towards greater understanding of their story and a healthier relationship with self, God, and others. Love that. Welcome. So glad you're here. And we're going to talk today about home assignments, which has many different words like home assignment, furlough, totalization. Now think of other things that people tend to call this.
Short stay. That's what we do.
Yeah. But it's basically for our listeners who are have not been cross-cultural workers. It's when someone leaves their field of service for a time to go back, most of the time to their home culture, but not always, to reconnect with supporters and families and things like that. So I'm going to talk to Kristen about that. I thought it'd be such a good idea to talk to you because you guys have experienced 2 home assignments and they've been different from each other. Talk about that. Then you also work with kiddos and adults who have experienced this. So you hear their perspectives on what it's like leading up to it, what it's like coming back to the field. So I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to you about it.
Yeah, thanks, Brandi. Yeah, I'm happy to be here today to talk about it. I think one of the things that I often say now, after having done it a few times and living overseas for more than a decade, is I do think in our expat world, our overseas worker world, we sort of normalize transitions like this. Everybody has to do it at some point. But I also tell people it's not normal. Most people don't have to pack up their lives and move for 4 months, 6 months, a year, repack and move back. And it's really stressful. And so I think sometimes it's one of those things that just rolls off our tongue like, oh, I just have to do this major life transition. And I think we can sometimes minimize how significant it is. It really is. Yeah, the impact is significant. And sometimes we have to do hard things sometimes, and sometimes that's home assignment.
Well, we talk about this a lot, but kids have emotional development loss with major life transition, right? It just kind of sets their what would be a normal emotional progression off just a little bit. They lose some of those key markers of peers and friends, and then we basically have a setup where we're guaranteeing our families to do that on repeat over the course of a kid's first 18 years. So there's messy. A cost for it.
Yes, absolutely. It is messy in the way that there can be really lovely things that come out of it, new friendships and relationships, but it is taxing and it is interrupting normal progression, like you were saying, James. So
I remember we had a day after we were in Central Asia, so we had a year in the States before we went to Germany, and both of our kids were younger at the time, but they both just broke down. Like I think we all just broke down the same day, and the kids were like, "We miss it so much." Like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and parents being able to feel and be honest with their kids that maybe this is hard for them too. Not over spiritualizing it, not romanticizing
Mm.
it, and just being able to say, like, this is a hard, I'm missing it too. This is hard for me too. I think help breeds uh just empathy within the family and we're in this thing together. It's going to be beautiful and it's going to be hard. There's going to be gains and there's going to be losses, and but we got each other and we can do this.
I
So
love that idea of like being present with your kids and their experience of it, and being honest about your own experience too. Like it does not have to be one thing or another. Like it can be this expectation that it's going to be wonderful. And I think sometimes from the people that we're returning to, they have an expectation that it's going to be this wonderful experience for us too. I think it's really a helpful thing. So give
yeah.
your kids space to have all the feels about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there can be things that they look forward to, right? If they're going back to a home culture that they remember and do have relational connection with maybe grandparents, friends or extended family, that can be such a joy to be reunited with those people and places. But there are plenty of children who are returning to a place that they have no memory of and they cannot conceptualize what are in a way, what are you asking me to do? You're they might not have those words for it, but they might not be excited about it. Or you might have a teenager who says, actually, this is home for me now. Or an elementary
Mm.
school student, this is home. My host culture is home for me now. Why are you dragging me away, from my home to take me to maybe it was your home, but it's never been my home. And that anger is valid, or just that feeling, the tension of, I didn't choose this,
Mm.
but it affects me.
And probably if you have more than one kid, they're they're at exactly opposite different places. You're right. There's the one that's like, I don't want to leave. There's all my friends are here, and the other one who's like, this year I've had no friends in my class. Everybody hates me. Please take me somewhere else. So there's it seems like there's often a mix, and I think the larger the family, the kids are just at different places with those transitions. Let's kind
Hmm.
of look at some of the big picture stuff because I think 20 years ago, everybody kind of did a similar thing. They were gone for 4 years and they came back for a year. And it seemed
Hmm.
like that was a more normal kind of rhythm that people did and trying to line that up. And it was just more expensive and harder to travel. And the distances certainly felt greater. When you think about what the options are now that you see that you run into, what does it look like to begin thinking for doing that kind of transition? When do you start looking? What are some of the big pieces? Like, especially if you're thinking of a family that's maybe doing this for the first time, what would be
Yeah.
helpful to start thinking about?
Yeah. I think for a year-long home assignment, that in my experience, well, to be honest, I'm thinking about it years in advance emotionally
Mm.
because I'm thinking, as far as planning goes, when is the least worst time to do this? Or if I have no choice in it, like whether
Right.
it's by the host country I'm in says this is when you have to, leave for a time, or my org says that.
Mm.
I'm feeling that for a long time, knowing this impending change is coming, but physically preparing for, say, a year-long home assignment, I think begins, in my experience, it's about when the first holidays start to pass
Mm.
that won't be celebrated in that country where I'm living in. And I start thinking about, okay, what is there anything from this holiday, say it's Christmas,
Sure.
that I want to take with me?
Mm.
So when I'm putting Christmas away, I'm going to start making two different piles. The things that are going to go in storage for, 2 years basically, and the things that are going to go with us, like the couple of important like things that make Christmas feel like Christmas to our family, that no matter where we are in the world, we're going to have these things with us. And so that's when I physically start preparing for a home assignment. And I just make kind of the bins that are going to go in storage for a
Mm.
long time. And then the smaller box that's going to come with us where we're going. For a shorter home assignment, lately we've been doing summer home assignments for a couple months every summer. I feel like that can start, as far as physically packing or emotionally preparing for it, just, a couple months in advance. But the longer ones, I think, take a year's worth of thinking about.
what's the emotional prep look like for family and kids in those longer ones, that kind of 6 months to.
Yes. Well, I think if there is access to like counseling, coaching, mental health services for a worker for or for the children, to give them an opportunity to start processing this or having family conversations about the impending change. I think especially for a first-time returner for a home assignment, you've changed while you have lived overseas, but you might be returning to a place where people, family, friends might expect you to be returning just as you are, or just as you were when you left. And so I think giving yourself time and space, 18 months to 2 years, even before you have this return, to just start processing, how have I grown and changed? What do I see differently about my family of origin dynamics? What might I need to know about who I am going back into, like re-entering my home country setting. So I recommend that if people have access to that kind of care, member care or counseling care.
For those that can't see, Brandy's nodding her head so much it looks like she's at a rock concert in slow motion. Affirming. Sorry, keep going.
What was like, yes.
Yeah, I just think like just honoring like it, you aren't the same as when you left, and you might see things differently, and then how being able to dig a little bit into your story so that when you are back with people who are a historical and important part of your story, you can have greater self-understanding and maybe even greater patience, maybe even greater, I don't know, whatever boundaries, whatever it is that might be, joy, gratitude. I think that is a really valuable thing to do if you can do that. And I think for children and families, they don't want to necessarily live in this impending change unless they're unhappy where they are. Some kids are in really socially isolated places, and so they're ready and say, hey, when are we getting on that plane? And they're doing a countdown. And others are really happy where they are and they don't want to go anywhere. And so I think reading what each kid needs is really important, and being present with them where they are in their story and what this change looks like for them. But I do think that emotional preparation for families can happen months in advance with having some intentional conversations, not every night at dinner, but just having some times where we're like, okay, how's everybody doing with this? This is coming up. It's about 3 months away. How are you feeling about it? And giving chance at the dinner table or going for a walk together or something to just check in with each one and seeing how they're doing with this anticipated change. I just think trying to ever build that secure attachment kind of dynamic with your children to make that openness for conversation is so vital.
Especially when you're setting them up to be a hidden immigrant where they look like everybody else in their home context, but internally they're so different.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about parents having changed. Well, for sure, the kids have changed massively in ways that some of their peers in their home context, cousins, friends,
Mm-hmm.
neighbor, may not have. So even beginning to do stuff, I think, and I love the time frame. Like even somebody that's gone for 3 years, halfway through, you're actually beginning to think through some of those pieces of that transition. And for kids, really practical things is helping them maintain some relationships in that country of origin. Some people really break all ties because they want to fit in into this new culture, but the challenge I think for kids, with you were talking about attachment, is being able to know that attachment lasts beyond 2 or 3 years is really important. So doing
Mm-hmm.
some things to keep those strong attachments with grandparents, with friends. I know people who have had family friends, so not just relatives, come and visit, which is so powerful to get seen and known, so that when you do make that transition, your kids have someone that knows their context. So there's not so much of that hidden immigrant happening. And I really like the time frame you're talking about, to be intentional and to be thinking about it. Yeah, that far ahead. I mean, you're really saying a minimum of a year when you're talking about holidays
Mm-hmm.
is really when you're starting to do the practical things of the what goes where when, and then the emotional things of, hey, let's start talking about what do we like and love about where we're at, and what do we like and love about the place we're going to, and who are those people in those places that there actually is a strong attachment, and to help cultivate that, because we can do that with technology so much better than we could even 10 or 15 years ago. I had better internet living in Nairobi, Kenya than my parents did in North Texas for most of my time there.
Yeah, yeah. I think the end of our time in Central Asia was better than the beginning of our time in Germany. It was like you had to
Yeah.
wait. Remember that having to wait so long to get internet in your house?
Yes.
Um, I remember, Kristen, this conversation you and I had, and I just remember you mentioning something, and it stuck with me. I think it was before y'all's US furlough, and you're talking, you mentioned the word scaffolding and having
Mhm.
scaffolding in place. And I like that term because it's like the support structure that you're building in advance
Mhm.
for your family. And it's not like protecting them from the potential pain and pitfalls of a home assignment, but it's just putting these structures in place to kind of give an atmosphere of safety
Mm.
Mhm.
for your kids to transition to. So I like that term, and you're thinking about preparing
Yeah,
for that.
absolutely, Brandy. Yeah, when I think about scaffolding for a home assignment like this, say we're talking about a year or a transition to like another country for a year, I do think that there are structures and things that as the adults we can put in place for ourselves or for our families to try to help and support us to do this hard thing well. It's still going to be bumpy, it's still going to be clunky. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, but how can we do what is within our control to set ourselves up for like the best, the best that we can do with what's in our control. Yeah, so that part of that would be what kind of care or might we need before we go, whether that's counseling or being intentional in friendships, like you were saying, James, how do we set up intentionality to remain connected in relationships, whether it's going, leaving the home country to go to the host country, or when it's leaving the host country to go back to the home country, depending on the ages of children or adults, like who do you want to stay in touch with? How are you going to be intentional ahead of time about having those conversations? So that you don't get there down the road and you say, I really wish I would have said to this friend that I really want to keep in touch with you while I'm gone. And of course, you can reach out at any time. But when things are feeling hard, it's nice to know that you have people and things in place to help with the hard.
That's so true. What would you say are some of the scaffolding pieces you did for the two very different trips,
Mhm.
home assignments, or out of Germany assignments you did? Both the
Yeah.
one where you went to the back to the States, your passport country, and the one you went to Thailand, and what was similar and different about those?
Yeah, so when we did our very first 1 year long home assignment, my kids were middle school down through elementary school. And some of the things we did intentionally were we met with the counselor as a family and did like 2 sessions specifically on
Mm.
transition and intentionally talking about this transition. We did a time where it was just our family and we did like some contemplative collage as a
Mm.
family
Mhm.
where we just like took some space and held space together to talk about or like let our work out some of this transition happening. And I actually just found those in our
Oh,
attic when I was cleaning it recently, and it was just really precious to look through those collages and remember um, what was on everyone's minds, at that time before that transition. So before leaving, the other thing that I would say is best done when it starts months in advance, and we did this too, is having intentional time with people who are important to you.
mm.
And so that is, you don't save that until the last week before you go. Like if you're leaving in July, you can start setting intentional times with people in March, in April, in May, because that last month especially is bonkers and you're not the best version of yourself. And yes, you'll probably see those people again and you'll bump into each other and it's okay. But well, you're still a better version of yourself. Intentional time with people, having them over for dinner, going out and doing an outing together, like those relationships that are really important to you and to your kids. And so that was the other thing I did intentionally is I had intentional kind of end of the school year goodbye parties for my kids. Like if they wanted a sleepover, we did a sleepover with their closest
Mm.
friends. If they wanted to go to a park or something like that, that's what we did. And they got to pick the menu, the things that they wanted to do. And I did the work of making sure to make that happen. so that they could have good goodbyes with their people. And if they wanted one-on-one play dates with friends, I made sure that that happened. But again, the best time to do it isn't the last week before you're leaving. It's better to do it weeks in advance because it just gets crazy. Moving is a lot. So,
I know,
um,
I know so many
yeah.
families that, that whenever school ends, they leave like 3 days later. And every time I'm like, what are you doing? Because it's usually summer and there's like stuff they want to get to, and there's the camps that the kids are all of the good reasons, but it's also that final week before leaving is always so hectic.
Yeah, yeah. So part of that, I think the scaffolding that we've grown into
Right,
over the years is that we try to, even if it's hard, it's home, we try to move out of our house at least like a week in advance.
right,
Move to some like move, go stay with friends, go stay in a fun hotel like that has a swimming pool or something like that, and so then there's still going to be bits and bobs that you have to do over the course of that week, but you're not living in the chaos so much. I can remember my kids saying we stayed at some friend's house for that first home assignment, and they just said it feels nice to be in a normal home where there's not boxes and there's not
right.
suitcases everywhere, and there's, yeah, it brought peace
Hmm.
and a sense of security to not just be living in chaos right up until departure day. And so we have made that a practice now. In Thailand, when we were on the other end of our time in Thailand, when we were leaving Thailand, it was a lot easier to find a really wonderful hotel to stay in. And now we have a favorite hotel that we go to there because of that. That's where
Right.
we stayed our last days that we were there, and it had a rooftop pool and it was gorgeous and affordable because it was Thailand. And trying to just make space to end well and not save it all for the last couple of weeks. So yeah, so those are some like practical things that we have done to be intentional in relationship early, to not save all those last moving out things till the very end, to try to wrap up work things, a month in advance or so, or if that's possible. So because it's a lot to try to move your family in this way. So
You kind of touched on there's also then doing similar things on the return, especially if you're gone for that 6 months to a year, where
yeah.
you're you're kind of setting yourself up to in order to navigate your family or shepherd them well, to really dedicate a lot of time as parents and a family on on both ends of this, both the leaving and then also the leaving again and the coming back. And it's having that rhythm takes time and capacity, and if people are trying to like work all the way up until the day they leave, which is most of the people I know, then
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard to fit that in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and again, that's where I want to come back to say, like, this isn't normal. Most
right.
people don't have to do this. And so I want us to, in some ways, stop pretending as overseas workers that this should somehow be easy,
Right.
or that this is, yeah, it's really hard. It's really disruptive. And it's so great to be with the people that we love. So we live in this tension of this is what we have to do to get to spend a year, maybe closer to our families or whatever, but it comes at a cost. And it takes time to recover from it.
Yeah.
It does. It is a both and situation for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
I wonder, Christian, if we could think about what people can do, maybe people, our single colleagues or colleagues who don't have children, if preparation, what looks differently for them or how they can, get ready for their home assignments.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some timeline things that I think are similar when it comes to at least how I do it is following kind of that holiday model is like, if I'm not going to celebrate this next holiday in that place, then I'm going to start thinking about how am I going to make packing easier on the other end by
Amen.
starting to think about it earlier. And the things that I'm just not going to need and the things that maybe I want to have. And so I think that would be true for singles as well, or people who don't have kids in the home anymore or don't have children. Just keeping that timeline in mind that you're being kind to yourself to start it early, and not save it all to the end, to be mindful that you also need space to move out of your space if you can a little, a week early, to try to wrap up the tasks of your job, you know, at least 2 weeks in advance. Like there's just so many, especially when you're leaving another country, there's so many documents that have to be filled out or submitted, or just last minute grocery runs to get the souvenirs to take,
Yeah.
you know,
The
there's just,
The German trash
yes,
situation, the recycle situation is like, what do I do with this trash can? The trash can holds the trash. Like, where's it go? Because the
yeah,
trash situation, James, in Germany is intense.
Oh, I've
Like what
heard
you do. Yes.
the colors, the days,
Yes. Yes.
yes, yes.
the
So
getting
it's
yelled
just,
at by a German.
yeah, you'll get it. Yeah, you'll know if you've done it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So yeah, I just think like being like recognizing like there's things that you can do to be kind to yourself along this journey and create ways of, the end is going to be hard. It's going to have hard things, but maybe it can have a few like a little bit less hard if you plan well in advance, and nobody's going to do it perfectly, and there's going to be last minute, oh, I forgot to do this, oh, I forgot to do that. But if there's ways that any version of a worker, married, single, with kids, without kids, can just give themselves time and space to prepare for what really is a major transition, is wise. And then if they can, on the other end, we call it boat time in our family. Like if back in, if you can picture, you know, way back when, and people had to take a boat to get from one place to the next. And it would take a week or 10 days, say, to get from Europe back to America. If we are able, for those year-long home assignments, we try to plan what we call boat time upon arrival. And that is that we take time, just our family, for a week when we land somewhere new. Again, that takes intention, it takes budgeting to, you know, save money to be able to do that, or find like a missionary guest house or something to stay in. But we have all been through a lot and said a lot of hard goodbyes to people, places, and things that are home, and we're doing this transition, and it has just been a really good thing for us in both of our transitions. So when we transitioned to the US for the year, we took a week in Florida before going to Wheaton, Illinois, which is where we were going to be for the year. And then when we went to Thailand, we took a week at a guest house that's for overseas workers in on the beach in Thailand before going up to Chiang Mai
Dolphin
to
Bay.
just, yep, Dolphin Bay, to just have time where we're like, I see you. Okay, here we are. And how are you? And what do you need? And let's play together. Let's laugh together. Like, let's remember who we are, the Cagwin family. We're in this together, and we did it. We can do it, and we can cry. Just all the feelings.
I think for singles and couples without kids, it's allowing that same. I think
Yes.
singles tend to think sometimes it's just so hard to plan a vacation because you're by yourself, you have to do all the work. But to even be thinking of, oh, I should go stay with the people who give me the most life and aren't going to be demanding on my time and energy and resources while I recover. Because
Yes.
sometimes that changes. I know sometimes singles are like, I have to go straight to stay with family, and sometimes that's really costly on
Mhm.
as a because you're an aunt or an uncle, or you're staying with your parents who need care, and you're moving from a very heavy departure to another thing. And my wife and I try to do the same thing, where we do a stop or we go through somewhere else when we can. And sometimes it's more complicated because you got all the bags, or you're trying to figure out how to navigate stuff, but it's worth it just to have a little bit of spacing before we leave. Let us be ready to enter. And
Yes, exactly.
planning that through, I think, is helpful. We're in the
Mhm.
midst of figuring that out ourselves. We have to decide this weekend, basically, if we're going to stay in our house or if we're going to decide to be, homeless for 6 months. We'll have places to stay, but it won't be a place with our stuff. So, do we find somebody to stay here? There's somebody coming to visit. We have to re-sign a contract. Maybe we won't do that and stick our stuff in storage. And as you said, that's not what people have to do all the time. And we
Oh,
can't be in our country that we live in for 6 months. And
yeah.
it's a challenge. I think I was just talking with a coworker this week, and who just made a transition back to Australia with her family, and she's using I would say the normal and the healthy way of their experience. Everything's normal, right? Of we're in transition. It's okay that we're upset or that we're not quite settled or that the kids are trying to plug in, and she's just like normal, 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 normal. Oh, both it's a both and, right? It's for
Yes.
your
It's
home
normal and it
culture that's
sucks.
not normal,
Yeah.
but for the crazy thing that we have signed up for, that's what it costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like going home to your home culture, and we experience this a lot when we would go home from Central Asia and people would be like, "Aren't you so glad to be
Mm-hmm.
here? Weren't you so scared there?" Well, this is a big mess. Like, how do I explain to you that I really love it there? And I
Yeah.
feel a little bit safer there. And it's just like I think sometimes people in our home culture expect us to have an experience when we're home that is all sunshine and roses. And for us, we have a lot of complicated emotions that are just
Yeah,
tugging at us on the inside too. And it's like, and our kids too. And so like,
absolutely.
what do you do with that?
Well, yeah, Brandi, I think that's where making a plan for how you're going to keep in touch with your like third culture friends, whether
Mhm.
it's your kids' friends or it's your adult friends, because it's oftentimes people who have lived it who get it. And so
Mhm.
then to have
Mhm.
those safe people who you can just be honest with, like, I feel happy and I feel sad. I feel grateful to be here and I feel really bummed that I'm missing these other things, or I feel angry, or I feel this great big mixture of emotions. And of course, not everybody is that safe friend who can hold those things with us, but being able to identify who you can talk to about those hard things, because it might not be the people in the place that you're going to.
Mm.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
really hold that with you because you're complicated and they just might not have a frame to put it in.
Couple things I want to talk about. One is I just want to touch on education and how to think through what to do with kids and how you even begin to think that through. And then to also talk about the less than 6 months. How do you figure that? And also the school and the friends and the how much goodbye, that kind of stuff. So let's talk a little bit about just setting kids up. How do you think through education? And then we'll talk a little bit about those shorter things that are definitely longer than a trip, but shorter than a year or 6 months.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, our experience with education is when we went back to the US for that home assignment, we did choose to have our kids go to the public schools. There was good schools where we were at. And we felt like even though it's hard and it takes so much courage to start at a new place, that they would have a better opportunity for friendship by doing that. And so we chose to have them go to school and it ended up being good for all of them. It's not always good for, for families. It's always a little bit of a risk.
Mm,
So we just happened to live in this kind of furlough community. And so there was just some built-in friendships. We lived there in a year that there was just lovely families with kids, our kids' age. And
mm,
so they had easy friendships. And I know that's not true for everybody who does a home assignment related to school choices. And so, but again, that's something that you need to be thinking about well in advance. Like, what are we going to do? And then if it's not going well, are we open to a pivot?
right.
If it isn't going well, are we willing to pivot? Because how much hard do we feel like our child needs to do this year? And kid by kid, it might be a little bit different. I can remember telling our kids, like, if this isn't going well, we're going to give it like 6 weeks or something
Mm,
like that. And if it's not going well, let's talk about it
Mhm.
and we can pivot if we need to pivot.
That's a gift, really, to give your
so
kids.
so
So,
true.
yeah, for them to know, like, mom's listening to me, and I am going to have an opportunity. Like, I don't feel stuck in this situation.
Mhm. Yeah.
It takes
And
some of
we
the
did
pressure off for the kids to know that
Mhm.
it's okay. It actually helps them, I think, push through normal hard, that
hmm
adjustment, new school, all that kind of stuff. When they know that, oh yeah, if this really is terrible and doesn't work, my parents have my back and we'll do something different. It actually
Yeah.
frees them up to even push through a little more gritty type situations because they know that it's not final. I think when kids are like, this is the only thing, I have no other choice, and it's survive or die. The kids pick that up on their own, and then they just sometimes experience really difficult or even traumatic things because they think they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm just a big believer in like, we're in this together.
Right.
Like, your voice matters. Like, I really do want to hear how this is for you. And we're all going to have to do hard things in this transition. But what, even just like being able to measure, like, is that level of hard worth it? Like, is
Right.
that really building good things into my child? Or is it just going to make more things for them to talk on the couch about someday when they're an adult, There's a difference. So yeah, for when we then when we went to Thailand, our kids were older, obviously, and so we had a high schooler and two middle schoolers and an elementary schooler, and that was a bumpy time to do transition. To be quite honest, that's when kids are just becoming more their own person. That idea of like calling, that is a family calling when your kids are young and everybody's just home is when you're with your family. That starts to shift when kids get older and into adolescence because their peers become so much more important. And that's how it's supposed to
As they
be.
should, yeah.
Exactly. That's such a good thing. And so it does feel like more of like a ripping out or something that
Right.
like I feel that pulling out of a place. So that was harder. So we did decide schooling for our kids in Chiang Mai was it was different. We thought they were going to go to one school. That school didn't have space for them, so they went to a different school. And there were things about that were great, like a good fit for them. It was really hard to find friends. Especially for our middle schoolers and high schooler. They were lonely the whole year. And it helped us as a family. We grew really tight as a family. Like they had each other's back. They ate lunch together every day. They became each other's people for that year. And when we saw what was happening, like they're not developing into friendships in Chiang Mai the way that we had maybe hoped they would. At their school, we tried some extracurricular activities. Chiang Mai is just like a well-resourced place where there's opportunities for kids to be involved in things. And that helped a little bit. But then we also like leaned into reach out to your friends back in Kandern, like do phone calls with them, be in touch. Like the more important thing is that they feel connected with peers. And if it isn't, especially if it's just for a year and there's an endpoint in sight, I think sometimes it can be like, I'm going to survive this for a year and then I'm going to go back. And I'll be back with my people. Now, this is what my husband did his dissertation on, is that we're like, we have data, kids, that what others kids said is that they wish that they would have made friends at the beginning and not just thought, I'm going to wait the year out.
Right.
But that the data doesn't necessarily, mean anything when you're living it. And it's
when you're an adolescent.
But they all said, looking back on it, that there's some things like with what would have been in their control that they wish that they would have done differently. But yeah, so for schooling, we did an international school in Chiang Mai, and in the US, they went to public schools. I know a lot of families choose to homeschool to probably just based on resourcing or just trying to keep curriculum more consistent or I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to do it.
Right. And it might be different per kid.
Yeah. And it might be different per kid. Yeah, but that's what we did. So
I'm wondering if you see some common pitfalls or mistakes that people fall into as they're preparing their families for furlough, or maybe not preparing.
Or not prepared. Well, I think that's it.
Prepared. Let's start with that.
The not preparing. So then you're not leaving well physically and you're not leaving well emotionally. And then you're just a bit of like an open wound or something. I don't know. I just feel like there's a way to do this. Like it's still gonna hurt. It's still gonna have cost, but to not prepare in advance, to not do what you can do to leave well physically and relationally. I've seen that before. And it has, various impacts on especially different family members, how well kids feel seen, how well they feel like what is important to them matters. If you save all the packing till the end, then if the child is like, well, this is really important to me, well, there was no space made for that, and so that would be another thing is I feel like for children, they need to be able to bring their special things. And maybe you create a box, like you'll have to set boundaries around it, but that they get to choose what's special to them. And maybe it's a rock. And you're like, that's not special to me, but you don't matter. Like it isn't all about you. Like they need to be able to do some things and same, like you need to be able to bring some of your special things. So I think if you're not preparing well in advance, then those things get tossed out the window. And I think that it's more chaotic, which is ultimately more stressful.
So true.
Yeah, I just think planning and starting early is ultimately your friend, and what is already going to be a stressful experience, you can make it just a little bit less, the least worst kind of idea.
Yeah.
Like, how can you make what's
Yes.
already going to be hard a little less hard?
Yeah, I've
So,
heard, I think intentionality, I've heard this from you, is just so important throughout the process, like beforehand, while you're there, while you're preparing to come back,
Mhm.
when you're back, processing
Yeah,
it. So
yeah.
And nobody's going to advocate for the needs of your family, not necessarily an organization or a company's fault. They just don't know the unique needs of each of your kids. So
Yeah.
parents have to advocate sometimes for that time away from work to prepare for a transition. That's part of your job. And I
Hmm.
think we forget, like, no, my job's doing this one thing. And no, actually caring for your family and stewarding them to and from field locations overseas is part of your job. And to be willing to advocate for that when you have to. I think a lot of our pressure is from within and not so much from without, but sometimes it is. And for parents to be able to advocate like what you've talked about, taking that time away in between and doing the things that you need to do, planning early and wrapping up and not working that last week or two or three and all of those things I think parents have to advocate for, or singles have to advocate for with their coworkers and their boss. And don't let one person's unhealthy behavior set a precedent for everybody else's, right? Just because one person had no boundaries and left like their hair was on fire and then was burned out for 3 months doesn't mean that we all should do that.
Yes. Well said.
good
Well
point.
said.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kristen, as we're wrapping up, do you have any resources that you'd recommend for our listeners? Any books or podcasts or website?
Yeah. Well, as I was just thinking about this a little bit, I feel like increasingly we're becoming more resourced for how to do these things better, how to pay attention to the impact on our children and families and ourselves better. And so as I think about that, I think that there are there's a handful of organizations in the US that also offer kind of reentry debriefing opportunities for families, like MTI in Colorado, I know offers like a reentry kind of debriefing opportunity. And there are lots of other debriefing resources. And so I think just giving your family or yourself an opportunity to process the change that is happening is a wise thing to do. It's kind of like keeping short accounts with yourself and not letting it all build up until then it eventually becomes too much and it comes out sideways or crumbles in some way, you burn out, whatever. So I think of taking advantage of those kinds of resources, like a debriefing, an intentional debrief upon reentry, intentional leaving things. And so like TCK training website, like they have a lot of wonderful resources. And I think honestly, to just Google like transition resources for TCKs is just, now there's a field that studies this and does this. And for adults too, we can benefit from all of these things. Some organizations do it better than others. And so if your organization isn't well resourced in this, there are resources out there to help with both the front end, the journey during the home assignment, and then the reentry on the other side. So yeah, I think also if you are going to the US, or even when we were in Thailand is a well-resourced place, or Chiang Mai is anyways, with medical care, mental health care, taking advantage of those opportunities to care well for yourself while you're in a place that maybe has more resources. So
Thank you, Kristen.
That's so great.
This has been the best conversation, the easiest conversation. I've just really enjoyed talking to you, and I just love your wealth of just wisdom that you brought to our conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah,
right, thanks, Kristen.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, before we end, I do have an announcement to make. Our podcast is going to change. We have a new co-host. It's no longer James Covey. It's Dr. James Covey.
I was like, what are you talking about?
James just completed his doctorate. So well done. Do you want to tell us about it, James?
It's over.
Okay, there you go. He's going to be insufferable, but
yeah.
So you're not going to talk about your dissertation. Well, at least writing your dissertation anymore, but we can't talk about it because
That's true.
tell us what you wrote it on.
We'll probably have an episode on it, but it was the impact of individual traumatic stress on cross-cultural faith-based organizations. So it's 230 pages. So if you want to have a look, feel free to let me know and I'll send it to you. or wait until I do a more readable option maybe next year.
Well done, James. We're really proud of you.
Kristen, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's great.
I'll look you up in February.
Yeah, please do. Please do. That's the plan. Nice.
I woke up 30 minutes ago.
I am impressed, Randy, that you're up and doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
This will probably make the podcast. So I wrapped up my PhD this week.
What?
Here he goes. He's talking about it.
Congratulations! That is incredible.
Yeah.
A new office building that we've renovated, and people in my org have worked hard on, and so it's nice. Yeah, we've got a good presence here now. The Alliance does. So.
Where is it?
It is the old funeral home. Can you picture?
Yes. Yeah, it's right across the street from you guys. Where you live. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's a fun vibe.
I know. It kind of freaked me out at first, but now it's okay.